Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students and helping them to learn the foundation in the path to enlightenment. We use this book as our foundation and as our text, where I go chapter by chapter each Sunday, helping students to understand a chapter in the book. This Sunday, we're in chapter 16, which is titled Dissolving the Ego. Ego Serves No Purpose. This is where you start to understand what the ego is, the complications that it causes you in your day-to-day life, and then how to actually eliminate it. So I'm going to be teaching that after our meditation. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start is with the chanting. Then after the chanting, I'll come in with some guidance. Then there'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we'll come out of that meditation with some more chanting. So if you guys would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. The chanting sheets are over there on the cabinet. Just understand that this isn't a rite, a ritual, or ceremony, or worship, or prayer, or anything like that. The Buddha never taught any of those kinds of things. If you see those kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, it's actually not his real teachings. It's misunderstandings that people have. So I use these chants because it helps you to ease into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to join along, you're more than welcome to. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to be able to help you and essentially teaching you how to meditate while we're meditating. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we'll come out of that with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. Nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanang Apiwateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusana Poto Bhagavati. All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone online who's joining as well. What I'm going to do this evening is help you guys to understand the ego, what it is, the complications and difficulties that it causes in one's life, and then how to actually eliminate it. Because as long as the ego is in the mind, you're not going to be able to experience the enlightened mental state. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind is completely peaceful. It's a permanent mental state that you're experiencing at all times during your day. The mind doesn't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. The mind has been purified, so it no longer experiences those feelings because the causes and conditions that are producing them have been uprooted out of the mind. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, but actually what you can learn through the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you independently verify is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. This is why you can actually eliminate them. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll experience focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory because the mind will be performing optimally because it won't have these pollutions there any longer. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because you don't have bitterness and harshness and hostility, and you will have eliminated this ego because this ego will stand in the way of you having harmonious relationships with people. Once you understand what it is, and I talk about some of the complications that you experience because of it, you'll be able to see how it hinders you from having these harmonious relationships. So when you get this out of the way, along with all the other pollutions that are in the mind, you'll be able to have harmonious relationships with everybody around you. Where right now, you probably find that to be a struggle. There's probably certain relationships where you have hostility and bitterness and harshness in those relationships. And that can all be changed. It's just through training the mind, through cultivating the mind, developing the mind. And that starts with learning and understanding understanding the teachings of the Buddha, to investigate and examine them. Then you reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to train your mind and uproot the pollutions that he discovered. So we're going to be talking about two of these pollutions that the Buddha discovered today, because it's what we're referring to as the ego. So I'm going to help you guys to understand what is the ego and how to actually eliminate it and dissolve it. And I'm going to be pausing a few times as we go to see if you guys have questions. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you can ask questions. Here at the temple, if you guys could use the microphones, all you need to do is get a microphone and bring it back to your seat and press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. Just hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'd be helpful so that we don't get feedback through the speakers. And you can just keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question. And then for those of you guys that are online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. Or you can raise your hand electronically in Zoom and unmute your microphone and ask any and all questions that you like. So I'm going to just jump right in here and help you guys to understand what the ego is, so that then we can talk about ultimately using the most of our class with how to actually eliminate it. So what the ego is it's a collection of experiences from your past and your future expectations that you have of yourself. It's accumulation of your thoughts, your ideas, your perceptions of your self-image, in your self-identity. Your self-image is how you want to be perceived by others, both this physical body and a certain identity. We're going to talk about this in more detail as we go. The ego contains arrogance, pride, judgment, where you're measuring and comparing yourself against other people and thinking of yourself as superior, or in some cases you think of yourself as inferior. This is why, like when you go around maybe your boss or a famous celebrity or politician, you might be shaken up because if you're putting yourself above people and looking down on them, you're also going to be putting yourself below people. And what the Buddha is teaching you how to do is get to the point where your mind's completely stable, steady, and unshakable. There's no situation where your mind would be uncalm and shaken up by the time you get to enlightenment. But as long as this ego is in the mind, you can't experience that because your mind's going to be putting yourself above and below people, looking down on other people, and now it's going to cause difficulties and struggles in your day-to-day life. This word ego that we're using, it was only created like in the last 500 years or so. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't have this word ego available to him. So he taught over 2,500 years ago. He describes what we refer to as the ego in this ways of two different pollutions that are in the mind. It's called personal existence view and conceit. And it's actually helpful for you to understand the ego in the way that the Buddha taught it, because these two aspects that we're combining and calling the ego, if you split them out, you'll actually be able to see that there's different symptoms between the two of them, and there's different techniques to actually be able to eliminate them. If you combine it, you're not going to be able to fully understand it. But I'll explain to you guys what this is separately, and then we're going to combine it back together, and I'll explain to you more details about the ego. So there's these 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He referred to them as the 10 fetters. And they're referred to as fetters because during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were someone like a criminal and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. This was a shackle and a chain and a ball. And they would just keep you out on a field, where today we put prisoners in jail cells, and that's how we keep them confined. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. So when he discovers these 10 individual pollutions and ultimately figures out how to get rid of them out of the mind, he refers to them as the fetters, or the 10 fetters, because as long as these pollutions or these fetters are in your mind, it's keeping you trapped in this unenlightened state where you keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings over and over and over and over again. But just like a prisoner, if they release that fetter off their ankle and they're free to roam about the world, it's the same thing that is true about these 10 fetters in the mind, that when you eliminate them out of the mind, your mind is now free, that you're no longer bound up in experiencing the anger and the frustration and the stress and anxiety and the guilt and shame and fear and all these other feelings. So you can free your mind of that. by eliminating these fetters. So there's two fetters that the Buddha talks about that we're referring to as ego. So I'll explain to you guys what these two fetters are so that you'll understand what they are, and you can actually see that your mind actually has these. Because remember, none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You'd like to independently verify these things. So I'll explain to you what they are and the symptoms that you experience because of them. The first one is called personal existence view. What this is where the mind has the clinging to your self-image or your self-identity. It holds on to this body and this mind thinking that this is who you are. The mind has this misunderstanding or confusion that this body is you or that this mind is you. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only feel happy when you're being perceived that way. You can only experience pleasant feelings when you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. But when you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, the mind experiences painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So I'll give you some examples here. Like say you went to a social situation where you spilt something on your clothing, maybe some spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream or something. You might experience embarrassment in that situation. That's because of your personal existence view, where the mind is clinging to this body, wanting it to appear to be a certain way to other people, and now you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. But this body is not permanent. You can't actually experience being perceived a certain way permanently. So the mind can only feel comfortable if people are perceiving you the way you want to be perceived. So now with this spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream over your clothing, you feel embarrassed because you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived. Or say you're standing in front of your closet and you're thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? Let me think, what clothes do I want to wear? That favorite shirt or that favorite pair of pants. And you might put that on and you look in the mirror. You're like, no, that's not how I want to look. And then you get another pair and you put that on. No, that's not how I want to look. And then you get another one. You're like, okay, now I feel good. Now I can go outside. Because your mind says like, okay, I'm going to be perceived the way I want to be perceived, right? Or maybe you've looked in a mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair, and maybe you were shaken up by this. This was your personal existence view, where you were clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only be happy when you're being perceived that way. So this wrinkle or this pimple or this mole or some other thing that's happening with this physical body, the mind doesn't like that, and you feel like you're not going to be perceived the way you want to be perceived, so the mind's shaken up by that. Or if you're like me, when I was a kid, I used to get out the gel and the mousse and I would run it through my hair and try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I'd go outside, right? And sometimes I did this for so long, I'd miss the school bus on the way to school, right? So this is the personal existence view, clinging to this body, wanting it to be perceived by others in a certain way, thinking that this is who you are as a person, and now you can only feel comfortable when you're being perceived that way. So that's the self-image part of it. But then there's a self-identity that the mind can cling to. This is based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You can cling to this identity of who you think you are. And now you'll find that you have difficulties and struggles in certain situations. So let's just say you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you identify with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And when you guys are together, you feel pretty good, right? There's a certain amount of comfort with that. Or maybe I am a husband or I'm a wife. You feel a certain amount of comfort with that. But then when you guys break up or the relationship's over, your mind doesn't identify with, I am single. So now the mind might feel like the way to solve that, because it feels uncomfortable, it might feel like, well, let me hurry up and get right back into another relationship because that'll make me feel better, because the identity will now be intact, that I'm a boyfriend again, I'm a girlfriend again, right? But that doesn't actually solve the problem, because the underlying problem is this pollution where you're identifying with this role as I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife, as who you are as a person. But that's not who you are as a person. But the mind will cling to that, thinking that is who you are, and it can only feel comfortable when that's intact. Or say you have a certain nationality in your mind, like I am American, or I am Dutch, right? Or I am Colombian, or I am German, or any of this I am around your nationality, your culture, your sexual orientation, any number of things the mind can hold on to. So now maybe you're in a restaurant and 2 tables over, people say, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I've never heard this before, but this might be something that somebody could say, right? If you were in a restaurant, 2 tables over, someone could say that stuff and you're like so happy, like, yay, they're talking about me. They think I'm so great, right? But now 2 tables over, they're saying something degrading and disparaging about the place that this body of yours was born in, right? And now they say something negative and degrading, and now you're angry and you're frustrated because they're talking about me. But that's just your identity that you're clinging to, thinking that that's who you are as a person. Or say you have a certain job or occupation. Maybe your mind identifies with, I am a police officer. And now when you're doing that job, you feel great. But then maybe you retire, you get injured, you can't do the job anymore. Maybe you get fired or you get laid off or something like this. And now you're driving a taxi. Your mind's identifying with, I am a police officer. Now you're disgruntled and frustrated because your mind is not identifying with, I am a taxi driver. It's still identifying with, I am a police officer. And now the mind can't be comfortable and content and peaceful in that situation. So your mind can cling to any number of things as who you think you are as a person. And ultimately, this is part of your ego, of who you think you are. Because the mind is clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent, when in reality it is impermanent. It's constantly changing. But the mind craves for it to be permanent. So that's why when you see the wrinkle and the pimple and the mole and all that stuff, the mind's shaken up by that because it doesn't understand that this body is impermanent. Or when you have that job as a police officer, the mind clings to that, thinking that that's who you are as a person. But now when it changes, and it will change because it's not permanent, then the mind is uncomfortable with that change because the mind's craving permanence. So with this personal existence view in the mind, you can't be peaceful and joyful permanently. And you'll start identifying with these things as who you think you are as a person. And now the mind might even be puffed out, right? Like say, I'll just use a sports analogy because I know we have a couple of people that maybe watch football or something or soccer, is like, let's just say you're from a certain country that won the World Cup. Right? And now you think like, wow, I am Argentinian, or I am this, or I am that, right? Like, wow, I'm better than everybody else, walking around with like your chest puffed out and a chip on your shoulder, right? Or maybe I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, right? Now you're walking around all proud and puffed out. This is part of the ego that the mind has having. And as long as you're doing that, people are going to push you aside. They're not going to be interested in hanging around somebody who's arrogant and prideful and boastful. And it's going to stand in your way of just having love and kindness for all beings. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about these healthy mental states. That 2 weeks ago, I talked about loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, where loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards others, right? And you can get to a point where you have love and kindness for everybody. Right now, it's probably challenging for you to do that in certain situations. And last week, we talked about true love, love without attachment, how to love people unconditionally without wanting or expecting anything from them and putting your demands on them and controlling them and expecting things from them. But as long as you have this personal existence view and this conceit in the mind, it's going to make it hard for you to be able to do that because you can't see people as they are. And as you come around with your arrogance and your pride and your boastfulness, people will push you aside and they won't be interested in being around you. Then there's this conceit. What the conceit is where there's arrogance and pride, there's measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being above people or below people. And now when there's people that you feel are below you, you might talk down to them. And then when there's people that you think are above you and you want something from them, you might talk to them in a different way. But what you would like to get to is where you don't do that. Where this is coming from is our animalistic instincts and our existences in our past lives. Now, I know many of you guys might not have studied the cycle of rebirth yet, but even this is something that you can independently verify. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you can actually independently verify that you have multiple lives. And this is something that you get to as you journey on the path to enlightenment. But when we were in our animal existences, we needed conceit. We would have died without it. Because when we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're teaching us how to hunt. And if we didn't know who they were, we wouldn't have learned how to survive as a pack of wolves. If we were in a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's showing us where the food is, where the watering holes are, where the migration paths are. If we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was and who was above us, we would have just been roaming out in the jungle by ourselves without even knowing what was going on. So we needed this strong pecking order in the animal existences. But when we come into this human life, we tend to retain this and we develop this, and it is more and more deeply rooted, where we're going into a social situation and we're looking for a pecking order of who's above us and who's below us. And now we treat one group of people in one way and another group of people in another way. And it really taxes your mind, and you get exhausted where you're constantly trying to figure out who's above you and who's below you. And now it causes all kinds of complications when you start interacting with people. And you can't be peaceful and joyful in that situation, because you have to figure out first, is this person above me or below me? Because I need to function differently with that person versus this person over here. So this conceit is something that's deeply rooted, and it's been around for a long time. But you don't need it in this human realm. We can just get to the point where we see everybody as equally, and we don't think of ourselves as being above people or below people. Because putting yourself below people is just as dangerous as putting yourself above people. And if you put yourself above people, in some situations, you're going to put yourself below people too. Because if you go around like your boss, you can be shaken up in that situation, thinking that they're above you. And now you don't perform professionally in the best of your ability. Or if you have a certain famous politician or celebrity and you're around that person, you can be shaken up around that person. So you can't be permanently peaceful and joyful with a stable and steady mind as long as this conceit's in there, because you're judging, putting yourself above and below others. So I'm going to pause here before we go into talking about more of the complications that this causes, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine this and start calling this the ego. But I'd like you to be able to understand both of these individually before we combine it and talk about it as the ego. So if you have any questions on personal existence view or conceit, let me know and I'll answer those for you. Remember, you can use the mics here, and online you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So does anybody here online have questions? No questions here? Okay, let me see if we have any online. Welcome everybody. Nice to see you guys. Okay, I don't see, oh, we have a question here, maybe Kristen or Ted. Go ahead, guys.
David, good evening. What I understand about self-image and how I'm trying to have others perceive me, but what about self? What about the perception, I'm not happy, I gained 10 pounds, and just all, and with that, all that negative talk. And I mean, is that still fall under personal existence view?
That's being produced by personal existence view, because if it's I have gained weight, I am fat, that's the mind thinking that this body is you. But then there's also some sensual desire and ill will, since you've learned about those. There's some of that in there as well. But the main fetter here is the personal existence view. If you didn't have that, your mind wouldn't experience the other aspects of the discontentedness that is being produced based on the personal existence view.
Thank you, David.
Mm-hmm. Okay, looks like Emily might have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm still, so I understand that we don't have a permanent self, but I think I'm still struggling with then who am I kind of thing. Is it that I'm just ever evolving and there's no permanence, or is that I don't want to say nothing, but yeah, for lack of a better term, that I'm not really, I don't know. I don't know how to answer. If someone were to ask me, who am I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah. So what the mind does all throughout our life from birth is we're accumulating this personal existence view. That's why it's oftentimes very challenging for the mind to be able to understand this, or understand that it doesn't exist, that you need to eliminate it from the mind, because our mind's been conditioned to think that this is who we are. Like from birth, we were all given labels. I don't know what all of your labels are, but my label's David, right? And you guys each have labels, and now we start assigning this character and personality to it. And we have, for our nationality, we have flags and national anthems and sports teams and all this stuff to cheer, and like, I am this, so I should be cheering for that team. So what your mind will do, Emily, when you first start learning about personal existence view, is you'll start seeing how, yeah, that stuff isn't really me. Those are just things that have happened and roles that I fulfill, but it doesn't define who I am as a person. But then the mind is left with this question of, well, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then who am I? Right? That's the mind still grasping for a self, and it's still trying to grab onto something as who you think you are as a person. And the mind just keeps trying to grab and grab and grab for something that it can say concretely, this is me. But as soon as you allow the mind to grab onto something, you're still having personal existence view, because that thing is not permanent. That thing that the mind just grabbed onto is going to change. And then when it changes, you're lost and confused, feeling like less of a person or unwhole. So if somebody asked me, like, who are you? If they said that to me, if it was a student, I would say I'm a nobody. Right? It's actually really challenging to be a nobody. And this isn't like a pessimistic view or where you could have lack in confidence or anything like that, because sometimes when people hear me say that, they're like, wow, that's pretty pessimistic, or you must lack confidence if you say you're a nobody. Well, what we're taught in life, because of this ego, and people don't understand, is people teach you to go out into the world and be a somebody. And this is really burdening yourself, because now you have to go out into the world and prove yourself. You have to constantly be doing all these things to try to prove to other people that you're worthwhile and all this stuff. But you can get rid of all of that stuff and just realize, like, hey, there's 8 billion beings on this earth. And if you really look at it from like afar, if you were up in an airplane looking down, we just look like a bunch of ants that are like running around from place to place to place to place, just kind of collecting up supplies and doing things here and there, that in reality, we're really a nobody. But our mind, because of our ego, we want to be a somebody. It's actually pretty easy to be a somebody. You can go get a few degrees, get a job, get a nice salary, get a house. You might consider yourself to be a somebody, but to be a nobody, it's actually really challenging, because the mind keeps grasping for something, trying to be a somebody, where what you would really like to do is teach the mind, like, no. You just can do things that are wise. You can create a wonderful life for yourself. You can go through life, but you don't need to grab on to any of these things as who you think you are. Because there's so many labels that people try to adopt. Like, I know you live in America, Emily. It's, I am Democrat, I'm a Republican, I am conservative, I'm progressive, I am a Buddhist, I am a Christian, I am a Muslim. All of this I am. That's the mind just trying to grab some label of who you think you are as a person. And this is one of the things that is kind of like a joke in this tradition, is we say, even the Buddha was not a Buddhist, right? He didn't have that label of I am a Buddhist, because it didn't actually exist during his lifetime. But even if it did, he wouldn't have adopted that as who he thinks he is, because if people talk fondly about people who are Buddhist, you'd be happy. And if they speak unkindly and unfondly, then you would be angry or frustrated. So you need to get to the point where the mind's no longer trying to grasp at something of who you think you are as a person. So if somebody asked you, who are you? The way that you might interpret that question is, are you asking me, what do I do? Are you curious about what I do on a day-to-day basis? Oh, I share the teachings of the Buddha. I write books. I help students to learn the path to enlightenment. I live here in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I have a son. I have a wife. You might say these kinds of things as what you're doing as a human being, but you don't adopt any of that as who you think you are, right? Because even though I have a wife, I'm not going to always have a wife. One of us are going to die first, right? And even though I have this son, I'm not always going to be a father, because eventually I'm going to die, right? Or I'm not always going to be a Buddhist teacher. Even though I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, I'm not always going to be a Buddhist teacher, right? So it's important to eliminate any kind of grasping or clinging that the mind's trying to do. And that's what I'm going to teach you today through various techniques and certain ways to apply proactive training to strip this away out of the mind. Because I haven't talked about this much in this program up to this point. We've talked about personal existence view a couple of times throughout this program, but I haven't really given anybody the tools or techniques of how to eliminate it from the mind yet. It's not until we get here. So it's understandable that your mind is still grasping for who am I, but that's ultimately what you would like to get rid of. And then however you choose to answer that question with your friends or family, you might just interpret it as like, what do I do? Or what am I involved in? Or what do I do on a day-to-day basis? But your mind needs to get to the point where you don't identify with any of those things as who you are. They're just things that you choose to do as a result of the decisions that you're making and the goals that you have in this life.
Thank you, Teacher David.
Yeah, you're welcome. I saw another hand, but I must have answered your question. I think it was Joe or Adela, so I must have answered your question. Okay, so let me just check Facebook and YouTube. I don't see any questions there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is combine this together, the personal existence view, and can see whenever you hear me say the word ego, I'm referring to that, where the mind will cling to this self-image and self-identity, and where it has this arrogance and pride, measuring and comparing and putting yourself above people and below people. Because now we can talk about some more of the complications that you experience because of it. The ego stands in the way of being able to see true reality. What I mean by that is when you have ego in your mind, and any of these other pollutions too that the Buddha taught, it's like looking out at the world through a dirty window. And now everything you see looks dirty. Right? So if an individual has ego in their mind where they're measuring and comparing and putting themselves above others and below others, that ego that they have, they will cast that onto other people, and then they will read that reflection as coming back from the other person, when in reality it's coming from your own mind, because you're looking out through that ego at the other person. And now you're reading that as coming from the other person, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. So let me give you an example of this. Let's just say you're in a business meeting and somebody walks in, and this man or this woman walks in with wonderful clothes on, and their skin complexion is so amazing. Their hair is just fine-tuned, and every little hair is in exactly the right spot. And boy, do they smell great. And they walk in and, oh my gosh, he is so handsome, or she is so beautiful. And now you might be sitting there in your chair when they walk in, and you might say in your mind, look at them wanting to look so beautiful. Look at him trying to be so handsome, right? What just happened there is you casted your ego onto that other person, and you read that reflection as coming from them, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. Because the only thing that just happened is somebody walked into the room. That's really all that happened. But your mind's ego wanted to look good in front of other people. Your mind is the one who wants to be beautiful. Your mind is the one who wants to look handsome to everybody. And now when someone just walked in that you perceive to be handsome or that you perceive to be beautiful, you're like, look at her, thinks she's so special, trying to look beautiful in front of everyone. No, that's coming from your own mind. All that happened was that person just walked into the room, right? Or look at him, he thinks he's so handsome. No, that's your own mind trying to do that. Right? And now when you're in this business meeting, this person speaks up and shares some ideas and some thoughts that would contribute to this project that you're working on. And now you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed, and you become unskillful in the way that you interact with this person. Maybe you're jealous, right? And now you're disgruntled and frustrated with this person, and the other people in the business meeting can see that, and that reflects poorly on you, and it damages your relationships with the people that are in your office, right? So this is how the ego causes you difficulties and complications, that you can't see true reality, that all that's ever happened is this person just walked into the room. They could be the most lovely, most kind, most wonderful person you've ever met, but your mind didn't even give them the time of day, right? Because you're already judging them and looking down on them or looking up to them with such awe and aspiration, right? So what the mind's doing here is it's having this judgment. Judgment is something that you need to get rid of from the mind in order to be able to get to enlightenment. Judgment is where you're looking down on people and you're trying to determine what's wholesome or unwholesome for that other person, and trying to determine what that person should or shouldn't be doing in life. where you're putting expectations on this person perhaps and even trying to control them. But the judgment is just measuring and comparing and trying to determine what's wholesome for that person when you're not in that person's life and you don't know what that person should or shouldn't be doing in life. So you need to get rid of your judgment where you're measuring and comparing people and trying to determine what is or isn't wholesome about another person. What you need to be able to cultivate is something called discernment. Discernment is wise decision making. Everything that the Buddha taught is based in wise decision making, where you can make wise decisions in your day-to-day life about what you should or shouldn't be doing at any given time for yourself. But it's not your role to make decisions for other people, right? As soon as we try to insert ourselves into somebody else's life and tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing, that's the ego. That's the conceit that's choosing to do that. And you would like to get rid of that because it's going to hinder you from being able to see true reality and just love all beings, because you're going to want to put expectations on people and control people to do things a certain way. Where this is coming from is the mind's perceptions. What a perception is a view or opinion that may or may not even be true. And if the mind clings to your perceptions, it's going to lead you to unwise decisions that produces unwholesome results in your life. So I'll give you some examples of what a perception is and how they cause difficulties, because the mind in the unenlightened state will constantly form perceptions, and then it will cling to this, thinking that it's true reality when actually it's coming from your own mind. It's just a view or opinion that you've created in your own mind, and now you're clinging to that, thinking that that's true, and now you'll make decisions based on that that'll lead to unwholesome results. So for example, like say you have a child, and you say to your child, hey, I would like you to clean your room. Mommy, daddy's going to go away. We're going to be gone for an hour. We'd like you to clean your room. Can you clean your room for us? Yeah, sure, mommy, daddy, I'll clean my room, no worries. Okay, great, I'll be back in an hour. So now you might leave and you come back an hour later, and when you open the door to their bedroom, there's like books all over the floor, right? So your perception might be they haven't cleaned their room, but you don't really know because you weren't actually there. You just walked in an hour later. You don't know what's happened and what's transpired in this room since you've been gone. So the last thing you're interested in doing is forming a perception that they didn't clean their room. And now clinging to that, you might start yelling and hollering and screaming because you're not getting what you want, which is their room to be clean. Instead, you walk in and you see books all over the floor. I thought you were going to clean your room. What happened? Mom, Dad, I did clean my room. Right before you walked in, I hit the bookshelf with my hip and the books fell all over the floor and I was just getting ready to pick them up, but you walked in. I've been up here for an entire hour cleaning my room and it was pretty much spotless before you came. And then I bumped into the bookshelf and I spilled all these books all over the floor. I'm going to clean them up right now. Oh, okay. And this is what happens, right? But if you walked in with a perception that this person hasn't cleaned the room, that's where you clinging to that and holding on to that, wanting things to be a certain way, you could produce unskillful conduct. This is so problematic that in professional environments, like a police officer, they actually train you not to cling to your perceptions. This is part of the police training when you learn to be a police officer, because you're making life and death decisions as a police officer. And if you cling to your perceptions, you could actually make a really unwise decision. So for example, let's just say I was a police officer and I got dispatched to a store and I was told over the radio that this convenience store was being robbed. And I needed to go down there and take care of this. And they're being robbed at gunpoint. Well, now maybe as a police officer, I rush down there, lights and sirens running around, show up to the convenience store. Maybe I sling open the door and I see someone in a black hoodie with a gun and there's somebody laying on the floor bleeding out. And if I walk in and I cling to my perceptions, I might think the guy with the black hoodie and the gun is the robber, and I might pull my gun and I might start shooting that person. And now I might have just shot an innocent person, because that person with the black hoodie and the gun could be the cashier, and that person managed to get the gun away from the robber, and they actually shot the robber, and the robber is laying on the ground bleeding out, right? So this is why police officers, they're trained to go into an environment like that, pull their gun and say, police, police, put down your gun. Because if you're the person who's the cashier, you're going to look and you're going to see that it's the police and say, oh, thank goodness. And you're going to put your gun down immediately, right? Thank goodness there's help here, right? But if you're the person who's doing the robbing and you see the police officer, you might actually turn with your gun and point it towards the police officer. And that's when they're trained to shoot you. Right? So as a police officer, if you clung to your perceptions, you're going to be experiencing life and death decisions that you're going to be making based on false truths, based on the way things seem to be instead of the way that they actually are. So you need to be able to get to the point where you're not allowing your ego to form perceptions in your mind of the way things seem to be, and now you're making decisions based on that. Instead, you're making decisions based on the truth and true reality. And one of the ways to get to that is to ask questions. If you ask questions, like going into your children's room, hey, what happened? I thought you were going to clean your room. Or, hey, police, put down the gun, right? You're starting to get more information now by doing this. So your ego will form perceptions because the mind's ego thinks I'm so great and everybody else is bad. And therefore everyone else is the problem and I'm perfect. Right? But you need to get rid of that ego and realize that you are an imperfect being. If you still experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, your mind is not yet enlightened. You're an imperfect being, but the path to enlightenment is to become a better and better human being, to train the mind and purify the mind, to get to the point where your mind is no longer experiencing that. But you need to be able to understand these different teachings to be able to gradually train the mind to get to that point. Not only can the mind project its unwholesome qualities onto others and read that reflection as coming back from them when in reality is coming from your own mind, but you can also project your wholesome qualities onto other people and craving other people to do things your way. That's the ego too. Like, let's just say somebody decided to switch to a plant-based food supply and they're vegan. And now they think everybody in the world should be vegan. I'm vegan, so everyone else should be too. And now if somebody's eating meat, they might look down on this person, right? And think that they're lesser of a person. And now when they're around people, they talk very arrogant and prideful and boastful that they eat plants while other people are eating meat and they look down on those people. And now you go into those environments and you struggle and you have conflicts and difficulties where you can't relate to people on a one-on-one basis and see true reality and just love this person as they are. If they're choosing to eat meat, then that's their choice. They're not a bad person just because they're choosing to eat meat. That's the choice that they're making. But if our mind holds on to this ego and this conceit, thinking the wholesome things that you're doing in order to become a better and better person, if you think everybody should be doing that and you're trying to go out in the world and convince them to do it and pressure them to do it and look down on them because they're not doing things the way that you do it, this will hinder you from having loving and fulfilling and sustaining and satisfying relationships because the mind thinks that whatever I do, everybody else should do that same thing too. Because what I do is right and what everyone else does is wrong. That's what the ego is going to do for you. And now it blocks you from being able to have harmonious relationships with people. So what you might be coming to, as I'm starting to talk about some of these difficulties, and there's many others that the unenlightened mind experiences because of the ego, is what you might be coming to is that the ego serves no purpose. It really just gets in your way of having harmonious relationships with people. And the ego is very tricky. It tries to find a way to stick around. It really doesn't want to leave out of your mind. It just keeps finding a way to stick around more and more and more. And as you come out with your ego, people are just going to push you aside. They're not going to be interested in being around you. People that are into wholesome things and doing wholesome things, they're going to see your arrogance, your pride, your boastfulness, talking down to people, and they're just going to push you aside. They're going to be disinterested in associating with that. So while we needed this ego in this pecking order in the animal realm, we don't need it here in the human realm. We can get rid of it. And your mind will actually be free, more and more free because of it. You'll be able to be more peaceful and joyful. So any questions on the complications that the ego causes in the mind? All right. I don't see any questions here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to spend our time talking about how to actually eliminate this. And now I'm going to split it back out to personal existence view and conceit, because the symptoms with personal existence view and conceit are different, and the techniques of how to actually eliminate it is different as well. So this personal existence view, where the mind's clinging to this body or this mind, thinking that this is who you are, there's actually a meditation that the Buddha taught to train your mind to let this go and strip this away. But this is normally something that you learn and you start practicing when you're in what's called the jhanas. There's 4 stages of enlightenment that your mind will go through, and your mind's actually enlightened when you're in the 4th stage of enlightenment. In the 1st, 2nd, 3rd stage of enlightenment, your mind's not actually enlightened yet. It's not until you get to the 4th stage that your mind's actually enlightened. But before you get to the 1st stage of enlightenment, there's these 4 preliminary phases that your mind goes through. We call them the jhanas. These are like enhanced qualities of mind as you're moving through these 4 phases. And you'll know that your mind's moving through these 4 phases because you can see how the Buddha describes them, and you can see that that's exactly what you're experiencing. And you'll know your mind's moving through those 4 phases. And you get to those jhanas by putting together the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha, that you first learn that. You spend a good 6 months, even a year or longer, learning and practicing the Eightfold Path really, really closely. And ultimately, this is going to help you to get into the jhanas, where you're experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind. And as you do, you'll have an indication of that for yourself because you'll be able to see it. And that's where you start learning things like this, is the meditation to realize non-self, how to strip this away. Because prior to that, your mind's not really ready to let this go yet. So if you started doing this meditation at the very beginning of your journey to enlightenment, it's not going to have the effect that you need as it does once you get into the jhanas. So this is a meditation that I teach in various courses and retreats that I share. It's in this first book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's in chapter 11. So I describe it and I share it with people, but I don't advise you to actually start doing it until your mind's actually in the jhanas, because that's when it's going to have the most effect. Then you can also do things like change your language to be able to disassociate with this I or this me or mine. Because what the personal existence view is going to do is your mind's going to have these ideas of like, this is my cell phone, this is my house, my car, everything's mine, 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 mine. Or you might have the thought of, I am hungry, or I am thirsty, or I am angry. Where in reality, when you see that there's no such thing as this I and this self doesn't actually exist, then you realize that this English language is actually unfitting to fully describe what is actually truly occurring. It's not that I am hungry, it's that the body needs food. That's true reality, because there's no I here. It's just that the body needs food. There's some pain in the stomach, and now the body needs food. It's not that I am thirsty. It's that the body needs water. That's true reality. It's not that I am angry. It's that the mind is experiencing anger. That's true reality. So this English language hasn't been around long enough and integrated enough into the teachings of the Buddha, where a language like the Thai language, it was just created about 500 years ago. And Buddhism has been here in Thailand for 800 to 1200 years. So when they created the Thai language, they created it with the understanding of what the mind needed to do in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So when you speak in Thai language, you don't say, I am hungry. You actually speak in the third person. You say, David is hungry. Or like when my son comes home from school, it's not like, how was your day at school? It's, how was Bailan's day at school? Because my son's name is Bailan. So you say, how was Bailan's day at school? Right? You speak in the third person, right? So the English language doesn't have that. So the best way to be able to do that is disassociate with this word I and start using things like, you have a mobile phone, you say, can you hand me the mobile phone? Right? Instead of, can you hand me my mobile phone? Can you hand me the mobile phone? Right? Or I'm going to go to the car. I'm going to go to the house instead of mine, 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 mine. Or when you feel that hunger pain in the stomach, instead of thinking I am hungry, you can think to your mind, the body needs food. Let me go get some food, right? Or when the mind is experiencing anger, you can think the mind is experiencing anger instead of I am angry. So you can disassociate with this word I. And this works in about 95, 98% of the situations. There's some situations where it just doesn't work, and you're going to need to use this word my and I. And I'll give you an example of that. Like if I introduce you to my son, I would say, this is my son, Bailan. but I know he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. He's his own being. He makes his own decisions. This is the being that contributed sperm to create this being 13 years ago, right? But if I said that to you, if I was like, this is the being that I contributed sperm to create 13 years ago, you'd be like, man, this guy's a little bit weird. I don't know if I'm interested in getting to enlightenment, right? So I still need to say, this is my son, Bailan. But the mind understands he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. He's his own being, right? So you can train your mind to still say things like, this is my son, while not allowing your mind to cling to the idea that he is yours and that he belongs to you, right? So there's going to be a period of time where you might train your mind for 6 months or a year to use language differently than what you use it right now. And it'll work in a lot of situations. Because if you say to your friends or family, like, hand me my phone, it sounds pretty demanding. But if you start talking to people and you say, can you hand me the phone? Right? It's like, oh, they're a little bit more amenable to be able to hand you the phone because you don't sound so demanding, right? So about 95, 98% of the time you can speak in this way. And this is going to help you to be able to let go of this personal existence view. Then you're going to need to develop the perception of impermanence. Deeply soak this into the mind where you know with 100% certainty that everything around you is constantly changing. Because what personal existence view is doing is it's clinging to the body and it's clinging to the mind, wanting it to be permanent, when in reality it is impermanent. So you need to be able to independently verify and see for yourself that everything around you is constantly changing. And by independently verifying this universal truth, you can see that things are constantly changing and there's nothing around you that is permanent. Everything you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, this is all impermanent. And you need to be able to get to the point where you see that very clearly through your own independent verification. And this will help you to realize how unwise it is to cling to any of this as who you are. Because if you allow your mind to cling to anything as who you are, when it changes, you'll feel like less of a person. You'll feel unwhole. You'll feel like you don't even know who you are anymore. Sometimes people come to Thailand in search of themselves. They will go to their family back in their home country and they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find myself. I need to go find my true self. I'm going to go to Thailand and find myself. Well, they're not going to find themselves here in Thailand because it doesn't exist. You might find new hobbies, new friends, new activities, but none of that stuff is you. But somebody might go back to their home country and they'll be like, yay, I found myself. I know who I am again, right? But then 5 years later, when all that stuff changes, you're right back in the same problem. You don't know who you are. So if you cling to a job, to your friends, to your hobbies and activities, thinking that that's who you are, as soon as all that stuff changes, you'll be right back in the same problem, thinking that you don't know who you are anymore. Another thing that you can do is you can wear simple clothing and make your appearance look very simple. This is something that the Buddha taught and is very effective to be able to help you eliminate personal existence view. Because what the mind's going to do, like I mentioned, is stand in front of your closet and think about who am I going to see today and how do I want to look? And now you're going to pick the clothing specifically for those people. You're giving your mind the opportunity to allow personal existence view to stay intact. This is why the Buddha wore simple rag robes, that when he was a prince destined to become a king, I'm sure he wore very elaborate clothing, very expensive fabrics, I imagine. But when he went into this life to be able to get to enlightenment, he just wore simple rag robes. And not that you have to wear rag robes in order to be able to get to enlightenment, but if you allow your mind to keep thinking about who you're going to see and what do you want to wear, then it's going to keep having this personal existence view. So one of the things you can do in your household life is you can stack your clothes up and you can just pick off the top. So say you have casual clothes for when you go do casual things, and you have formal clothes for when you go do formal things, like maybe you go to work or something like this and you need to dress up really nice. So you don't allow your mind to pick. You just pick the first one on top of the stack. But you need to be careful because you're going to be in a situation where you've done this and your mind's going to try to pull from the middle, or it's going to pull from the bottom. And the reason why I know this is because that's what happened to me. That when I switched to these white clothes, I had them all stacked up and some of them actually fit a little bit better than others. And I was like, oh, I'm going to see that person today. And I would try to grab the white shirt, which all of them are exactly the same, other than a little bit different fit. And I would try to grab the one from the middle. So in that moment, when I saw the mind trying to do that, I would cut it off and say, nope, not going to let you do that. You're going to pick off the top. Right? So you're going to need to be diligent, not just to stack up your clothes, but while you're picking the clothes, don't allow your mind to grab from the middle of the stack, right? And this is going to help you to be able to disassociate with all of this as who you are as a person. There's even jewelry, makeup, and scents that the mind can cling to, right? If you have a lot of different jewelry, you might not feel comfortable going out into the world without that favorite necklace or those earrings or the rings. Or when you're in certain situations, you might keep touching your ring for reassurance and comfort. This is because the mind's attached to it and it's holding on to it. So if you start shedding these things gradually over time, you can get to the point where you're just as peaceful going out into the world with these things as without these things. And you might decide to do that for a period of time where you go out into the world without your jewelry, maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, and you train your mind to be comfortable without it. But then at some point you might just start wearing it again. So like if you're married and you have a wedding ring, you might decide to check in with your spouse, your life partner, before you take that off and you start wearing no ring at all, right? Because they might take that as an indication of, oh my goodness, there's something wrong in the relationship. So you might talk to them and help them understand a little bit about what you're doing. But then maybe one day you wear it, one day you don't. One day you wear it, one day you don't. Or maybe if you have a lot of jewelry, maybe you take out your earrings first and you just go out wearing your necklace and your rings. But then maybe you do that for a week or two, and then maybe you take off your rings and you do that for a week or two, get comfortable with that. Then maybe you take off your necklace, do that for a week or two, feel comfortable with that. And now you go 6 months or a year or 2 years without this jewelry. And you can see you can feel just as comfortable outside without the jewelry as with it. And then ultimately you might decide to start wearing it again, but your mind has shed this. And then even things like facial hair and head hair. You can actually cut this off in order to disassociate with this body as who you are. This is why people shave off their hair. Now, you don't have to shave off your hair in order to get to enlightenment, but it is a method that will really accelerate your ability to eliminate personal existence view. And this is why the Buddha cut off his hair. That at one time he had a very long, beautiful flowing hair. This is how they distinguished the royal family from common people, is that the royal family would have this long, beautiful flowing hair. And when they went out into the public, people knew you were a member of the royal family, because the people who were laborers and worked in fields and stuff, we wouldn't be able to grow our hair very long because it would get knotted and tangled up and we wouldn't have the ability to shampoo it and take care of it, where the royal family had servants to brush it and comb it and take care of it. So if you went out into the public with this long, beautiful flowing hair, they knew you were a member of the royal family, right? So today we just put the king and the queen on pictures and hang them around the kingdom, or we put them on the money and stuff like that, and everybody knows who they are. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have this. So the Buddha cut off his hair. That was one of the first things he did when he left the royal palace, to be able to help him train his mind to let go of this personal existence view. So you can do this too. You can cut off your head hair, you can cut off your facial hair. If just talking about this, you kind of cringe and you can't even imagine doing that and you feel uncomfortable, that's all the more reason why it would be helpful for you. Usually women have a lot harder time cutting off their head hair, where men have a lot harder time cutting off their facial hair. If you're going to do these kinds of things, I suggest you do it slowly, where sometimes women will cut their hair back slowly but surely over a long period of time, getting it shorter and shorter. Or men, if they have a full beard and a mustache, they might go down to a goatee for a period of time, then they might go to just a mustache, then they might get rid of their mustache, and do this over multiple weeks and months so that the mind can slowly adjust to it. Because remember, the mind craves permanence. It wants things to be permanent. And another way to say that is that the mind doesn't like change. It doesn't like impermanence. Look at all parts of your life, wherever you were struggling and having the most difficulties, it was when you were experiencing change. When you changed jobs, when you change relationships, when you changed living locations, when relationships were changing, like people were dying and things like this. This was the most challenging times for you in your life because your mind doesn't like change. So if you're going to implement change in order to get your mind comfortable with change, if you do it slowly but surely, it'll actually be more helpful. Your mind will almost not recognize that that's what you're doing. You're kind of sneaking up on it. And one of the things you might realize if you choose to cut off your head hair, your facial hair, is that not only are you probably attached to these things and holding on to it, wanting it to be permanent, but people around you probably are too. I've had students who have cut off their hair and their life partners or their parents or their siblings or their children were upset by that because their mind was craving permanence. You're not causing them to be upset. Their mind is causing it themselves because they're craving permanence. But not only is it helping you to cut off your hair, but it's helping them too, because those people might be trying to control you or force you to do things or put expectations on you. And when you cut off your hair and they don't like it, they're going to realize, hey, I can't control this person. Right? So it's going to take them time to adjust to it as well. So this is something you can do, but it's up to you whether you choose to do this or not. This path is your own independent journey. I'm here pointing the way and showing you how to do it. But what you choose to do in any given day, it's a choice for you to make. But cutting off head hair and facial hair will surely help you to be able to eliminate this personal existence view and get more and more comfortable with going out into the world and not associating with this body as who you are. Because the mind's going to want to be perceived by others in a certain way, and hair is a big way that the mind does that. Then whenever you see personal existence view arising in your day-to-day life, you'd like to cut that off and let it go. Don't allow the mind to do that. The example I gave you there is where I was pulling from the middle of the stack of clothes and I noticed the personal existence view arising and I cut that off and let it go, right? Or if you're noticing that you're in a certain situation and you're noticing this personal existence view arising, you like to cut it off and let it go. That's going to help you in the moment. All these others are proactive things that you can be doing ahead of time. This one is in the moment. As it's actually occurring, you can train your mind to cut it off and let it go. Then there's seeking guidance from a teacher. You're going to need to understand more about what personal existence view is. In situations where it's arising, you're going to need to be able to understand that and get more guidance from a teacher. So that's part of what a teacher does, is we're like essentially like a life coach, or some people might think of us like a therapist or something like that. We don't want anything from you. We don't expect anything from you. We're just here to help you. But you can always reach us either through the way that I help students is you can ask questions in live classes. You can post in our Facebook group and I will answer it there. I'm the only one who answers it. You can send me private messages, or you can schedule personal guidance and we can either meet in person or we can meet in Zoom one-on-one, and you'll be able to get help that way. So you're going to need that along your journey. So do you guys have any questions on how to eliminate personal existence view? And it looks like Paul has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, David. Going back to perceptions, I find it extremely hard to avoid having perceptions of people who are really misbehaving. Imagine, say President Trump walking into the room and knowing full well that that person is very conceitful, very arrogant. My perception is bang on, I believe, because I know so much about this person. How do I avoid having perceptions when I'm in a situation where it's pretty obvious that this person is misbehaving?
This is where your mind needs to not crave everybody to do things a certain way, and understand that everybody's in a different place in their journey in life. And you actually considering that person to be conceited is actually your conceit that's choosing to consider that person as having conceit. When you're judging somebody else as having ego, that's actually your own ego. So you're actually experiencing the same exact thing that that person has. So it's unwise to look at other people and judge them in that way. What you need to be able to do is separate the choices and decisions that people make from the person themselves, where you can love the person, but you can disagree with their choices and decisions. So if this person is acting or functioning in a way that you might consider conceitful or arrogant or boastful, you can understand that that's their choices and decisions. And while you wouldn't make choices or decisions, or at least you're learning to not make choices and decisions in that way, you can still love the person, meaning have a genuine interest in seeing them be well, and understand that everybody's in a different part of their journey. And just because you're in one place in your journey and maybe that person's in another place doesn't make them better or worse than you. That's your ego that wants to do that. So instead, just love this person as they are, understanding that they're a work in progress and that you don't need to judge them as being a good person or a bad person, but they are just a living being, and you can just love them, meaning have a genuine interest in seeing them be well and not have a craving for them to be a certain way, because that's your expectations getting in the way and trying to cast those expectations on someone else of what they should or shouldn't be doing in the world, and now trying to change somebody else or convince somebody else to do things a certain way. You need to just be able to focus on your own growth and your own development without putting expectations on other people of what they should or shouldn't be doing.
Okay, David, it's just my point being is it's a lot harder to shed perceptions when you're dealing with misbehaving people that are clearly not doing things that are right, in a general sense. I mean, clearly, black and white, they're misbehaving. It's hard. It's very challenging to shed. That's where shedding perceptions is the hardest, it seems, for me anyhow.
Yeah, all you need to do is ask yourself this question, Paul. Are you perfect?
Far from it.
Right. So why would you put yourself in a position where you're judging another imperfect being as being imperfect when you yourself are imperfect? So you'd like to get away from that, where you just understand that everybody's in a different place in their life, and you're going to need to practice these teachings to be able to get rid of this conceit, which we haven't started to talk about how to eliminate yet, because that's what's going to help you to not judge other people. And it's going to be a long-term work in progress. You can't eliminate the conceit in just a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It takes multiple years to eliminate it.
Okay, David, second question, but I don't know that we can answer it. Like, just it's what it is that my daughter has just moved to a new town with a new job, and she's on her own, and she's under a lot of stress right now, and she's expressing it to us over the phone. And I don't know how much I can help her. I mean, I guess she's not following the teaching, nor would she at this stage in her life. But it's because of all the changes that she's experiencing right now. She has a lot of anxiety, and I'm very concerned for her welfare because of it.
Let's talk about this another time, Paul, since it doesn't relate to what we're talking about today. If you'd like to schedule some personal guidance or send me a message, we can talk about it from there.
Okay, good. Thanks, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, looks like Alicia has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
So I have a company. I'm a company owner, and I'm working with a team. And sometimes we need to have certain results after the work or the involvement of other team members. And I was thinking of the judgment part that you said earlier. I feel like I need to judge if the work is done well or not, because we need to have some direction with the results. And I find myself sometimes also then judging them because they produce the work and then the result. So I was just wondering how to think wiser here.
Sure. What you're needing to do as part of the path to enlightenment, is part of the wisdom that you're cultivating, is wisdom around vocabulary. The word judgment is meaning to look down on people and consider them to be either wholesome or unwholesome, looking at them as a bad person or a good person and what they should or shouldn't be doing in their life. You trying to decide for other people what they should or shouldn't be doing in their life. That's what you would like to get rid of. What you're talking about as an employer, where you're getting employees work and you need to evaluate it, that's what you're doing there, is you're evaluating whether their work is up to the level that you need in order to satisfy some requirement at work. Judgment would be, let's just say they're deficient in terms of your evaluation of their work and they haven't submitted the work to the level that you need them to submit it to. And now you look at them as a bad person. And now you look down on them and you're disgruntled and frustrated with them, instead of just being supportive and encouraging and helping them to be able to see how to make different decisions and bring their work product up to the level that you need. So in this situation, what you need to cultivate is where you can evaluate their work without judging them and looking down at them. And then also when someone submits really great work for you, that you don't look at them in such awe, and now you treat them differently than the people who are submitting work that isn't as high of a standard as those people, because you need to treat everybody equally, right? So you need to get to the point where you're using discernment or wise decision making to evaluate the work, but you're not judging them, meaning looking down on them or looking up to them in such awe based on the quality of their work. You just understand that this is different quality of work because the people have different experiences and they're making different decisions. And as an employer, your role is just to give them feedback to be able to bring their work to a certain level so that you can now use it for whatever requirements that you have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, no, Emily, you have a question?
Yeah, you kind of answered it, but just wanted to clarify. So there is a difference between you observing someone doing maybe something that's causing harm. Like you can observe, like, for example, I see like an adult like slap a kid across the face and I'm like, wow, like that adult just caused harm to the kid. That's not necessarily judgment, but it's when I allow my mind to start saying, oh, like that's such a bad person. They shouldn't have done that, this, that, and the third. There is a difference, right?
Yeah, you're understanding it, that you would look at that situation, you're like, that's unfortunate that that parent has slapped the child across the face. But you just understand that that's unfortunate. They've caused harm. That's a decision that they're making. But now you're not going to that next step that you talked about, which is now looking down on them and judging them as a negative, bad, disgraceful person. I'm going to condemn this person for what they've done. That's what people do in the public, and you see that all the time. But that's what's causing people to have all kinds of difficulties and struggles in their day-to-day life, where people are condemning each other for the things that they've done, where you're not interested in doing those kinds of things. You just like to be able to know for yourself what is wise and unwise for yourself, and then choose to do those things that are wise and eliminate the unwise things. And what other people choose to do, that's the choices that they're choosing to make, and you don't consider them to be a bad person or disgraceful or anything like that, because that would be the judgment coming in.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's coming from the conceit, by the way. Okay. So I think that's all the questions. Oh, we have a question here on YouTube. 1 second. Let's see. If one is craving, is that an indication that one is having conceit? In other words, one has removed conceit in personal existence view. Is it possible to have craving? Thanks. What's causing the craving is sensual desire. That's the fetter that is the main fetter that produces craving, desire, attachment. But the personal existence view is a specific type of craving, and conceit is a specific type of craving that is in the mind. But in general, central desire is the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, where the mind is wanting permanently agreeable contact through the sense bases of the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. So if someone did eliminate personal existence view and they did eliminate conceit, they could still have craving in their mind because of sensual desire. But typically you've eliminated the lower fetters first, and then you start working on the higher fetters, which conceit is one of the higher fetters. So conceivably, an individual has already eliminated sensual desire before they actually eliminate conceit. So the craving, desire, attachment would be if there's craving, desire, attachment, it would be then with the conceit. So there still can be craving, desire, attachment. When there's personal existence view and conceit is eliminated, it can still be in the mind because there's central desire. And then even the 6th and 7th fetter of desire for form and desire for formless could be in there as well. So I don't see any other questions. So now we'll move into conceit and how to actually eliminate this. So one of the things that the mind doesn't usually like to do when there's conceit is say things like thank you, sorry, or speak in polite ways like sir and ma'am and things like this. These are all things that were around at one time. And it would be wise for you to implement these in your day-to-day life, because the mind's conceit's going to think I'm above other people, and it doesn't need to say things like sorry or thank you or say things like sir or ma'am. So I would advise you to start integrating these kinds of things into your conversations if you're not already doing them. And if you speak other languages besides English, you're going to need to look at those other languages and see what are the equivalents of these kinds of things, where you can humble the mind and use things like thank you, sorry, sir, ma'am, and things of that nature. Just like shaving the hair is one of the biggest things that you can do in order to eliminate personal existence view, sleeping in a low position is actually one of the biggest things you can do to eliminate conceit. It sounds kind of odd for people who aren't familiar with this, that changing your sleeping position will actually change what's going on in your mind. But the answer is yes, that's exactly what it does. If you look at the cultures where there's a lot of ego and arrogance, they tend to sleep in very high positions in their bed. Where here in Asia, people don't do that. It's very challenging to find a bed that is actually high. Usually it's from the knee down. What I would encourage people to do who are interested in getting rid of conceit is get rid of your frame, get rid of your box spring, and just put the mattress right down on the floor. And you're going to notice that over a long-term period of time, going down into bed and getting up out of bed, it's going to humble the mind. It's not going to be one day or 1 week or even 1 month, but consistently over a long-term period, you're going to see that the mind's going to slowly be humbled because it's more down to earth. This is one of the things that you can actually do where it'll take you all of 3 to 5 minutes to set it up, and you will reap the rewards of that for countless months going forward in the future. So I would encourage you guys to do this because it'll really help you to be able to eliminate your conceit. If there's certain tasks that you think are beneath you, like maybe washing dishes or cleaning toilets or scrubbing floors or things like this, it's important for you to do those kinds of things. Because sometimes with the mind's conceit, it'll look at certain things as being below you. And you would like to get to the point where you're just as comfortable doing those things and not doing those things, and you don't see yourself as being above those kinds of things. So get down there and get your hands dirty if you need to. It's helpful to listen to others teach wisdom without any interest to be able to teach them anything at all. And you guys are actually doing that right now. But you would like to be able to do that over a consistent long-term period. And make sure that when you're going into environments where people are teaching, that you're not trying to teach them something. Because sometimes that's what people do, is they go into a learning environment and they think that they're there to teach the teacher, which is really unwise. You would like to be able to maintain your humbleness where you go into a learning environment and you don't know everything that person's teaching, and you just listen and understand and you ask questions. And maybe your thoughts and ideas are different, but at least you can listen to that person's thoughts and ideas without feeling the need to come up over the top of them and teach them something that you think you know. So this will be really helpful for you to do that on a consistent basis. Washing people's feet is really helpful for the mind. This will humble the mind, where you actually get down on your knees and actually wash somebody's feet. The Thai people do this for their parents, their grandparents, sometimes for their life partner and their siblings, sometimes for teachers that have been very impactful in their day-to-day life and helping them grow and develop as a person. Here in Thailand, they do birthdays very differently than we do in the West. In the West, it's my birthday. It's all about me. Give me presents, honor me, look at me, I'm a special person, look how great I am because I was born on this day, this is my day, right? That's the ego that does that. In Thailand, they flip the script. That if it's your birthday, you typically go to your parents and you thank them for giving you this life. And you might even host an event where you invite your friends and family and people that have been influential in your life, and you host them as a party. You might take 20 of your friends to a restaurant and treat all of them to dinner. And that's your birthday, that you're actually hosting an event for other people to essentially thank them for being influential and helpful in your life. So Thai people oftentimes will wash people's feet during these types of events, whether it's New Year's, Mother's Day, Father's Day, your birthday, or things like this. You might actually wash these people's feet. And I did this when I was living in America. I went to my mom, I went to my grandmother, got down on the ground, and I actually started washing their feet. And when I first started doing this, I was shaken up by it. My mind was uncomfortable. And that was the ego. That was the conceit that was getting triggered, because going down on the ground and being on my knees in front of my mom to wash her feet, my mind wasn't used to this, and it was shaken up by this. But after I did it a few times, the ego released in that particular situation, and I was able to let go of the conceit in that situation. So if you're noticing that you're shaken up and you're uncomfortable doing that, that's the exact reason why you like to do it, because your mind is uncomfortable doing that. That's your conceit that's kicking in, and you're trying to get rid of it by putting the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in and training it to be comfortable in that situation. So you can do this for people from time to time. You'd like to show respect and gratitude to people in all parts of your life, and you might even decide to use this Y that they do here in Thailand, but it's actually becoming an international symbol of politeness, of respect, of gratitude and appreciation. I see even celebrities at award shows where they will receive an award and they will Y to the audience, or they will thank the directors of the film, or they will thank the producers or the cast members or the camera crew or something like this, or their fellow stars that were co-starring in a particular video production with them. So this is something that you can do, and it really humbles the mind to be able to bow the head regularly. So here in Thailand, if you live here, probably 15, 20, 30 times throughout your day, you're constantly bowing to people if you're choosing to practice this. And I even do this when I travel. When I go to America to teach, I'll check in at a hotel. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Good morning. I'd like to check in. Or might go to Egypt. I've been to Egypt to share these teachings before. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, sir? I'd like to check into the hotel, right? And people really appreciate this. When I go to different places, when I went to Mexico, same thing. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Right? How are you? I'd like to check into the hotel, right? So you can actually practice this in all parts of your life, and it will really humble the mind. At one time, I used to ride a motorbike, and when I go in and out of my village, there's a gate, and the security guards will open the gate for you. And when they would open the gate, even I was riding the motorbike, I would bow my head, right? So this is humbling the mind as you do this. You're not putting yourself below them. It's just a way of humbling your mind. He's saying thank you. So if you integrate this into your life, it'll help you to humble the mind. You can practice generosity, loving kindness, and compassion. Generosity is where you're practicing giving and sharing with other people without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. This will humble the mind as you share with other people. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well without judgment and judging other people, but just having active goodwill towards others. And compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. These are very healthy qualities that we've talked about in recent classes that will help you to actually eliminate your conceit. Then you'd like to eliminate the judging of comparing yourself as being superior or inferior to others. If you're getting onto Facebook and you're looking at how many friends do I have versus how many friends my family members have, and you're comparing, like, look at me, I got 2,000 friends. He only has 500. I'm better, right? You need to cut all these things out of your mind, not allowing your mind to do that. So wherever you see yourself measuring and comparing, putting yourself as superior or inferior, you'd like to eliminate that. Be kind and gentle because it's the right thing to do, not because anybody convinced you to do it or forcing you to anything to do it, but because you understand it's the right thing to do, to be kind and gentle with other people. You can ask others advice in what they've learned in life and just listen without trying to teach them anything. Because what you'll tend to do sometimes with conceit is you'll get together with a bunch of friends, and maybe in this group of 10 people, you'll be at dinner, and maybe 2 or 3 of the people you've never met before. And maybe these people will start sharing things about their life and what it is that they've been doing in life and their accomplishments in life. And what you'll notice is your ego will want to come over the top of them and show them how you're more important and how you've accomplished things that are better than them. That's what your ego is going to want to do. So when people start sharing like they've got a master's degree or a PhD or they have some career or whatever, Just ask them questions and learn without trying to tell them what it is that you've done in life, because that's what your ego is going to want to do. It's going to want to get in there and tell them all the things that you've done, right? But you're not interested in doing that. So you can just ask people questions about what they've learned in life and just listen. You can help others without any expectation of anything in return or any kind of favor or positive benefit for yourself. You can seek guidance from a teacher, which is what you're doing on the path to enlightenment. You're going to need a teacher to be able to help you on your journey. That helps you to admit that you don't know everything about this world, right? That there's things that you're going to need help from other people to be able to understand. So just the act of choosing to have a teacher to learn the path to enlightenment is going to help humble your mind to a certain degree. And then anytime you see your mind is projecting arrogance, pride, judgment, or measuring and comparing, cut that off. That's in the moment with your mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're then applying right effort to cut that off and let it go. And then as you need, seek guidance from a teacher. You're going to need that throughout your journey to enlightenment. So do you guys have any questions on conceit and how to eliminate it? You got something, Leo?
Yeah, just wanted to ask, like my bed in Germany, and I think here in Thailand, up to the knee.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that is enough, or is it better to make it even, put it on the ground, or is it, that's fine?
The lower, the better. If it's on the ground, that's best, but knee below is okay. But the lower it is, the better.
And about the washing the feet,
Mm-hmm.
what did you tell your mother when you did it? Did you told her that this is what you want to do? You want to?
Yeah. When we got together, prior to getting together, me and my wife told my mom and my grandmother that, hey, we would like to do this thing for you. We were actually going to massage my grandmother and help her because we were into massage and we had a professional business to do massage and we knew how to do it ourselves. So we were going to see them and we were interested in massaging them. And we let them know as part of this, we would like to wash their feet. And would they be okay with that? And they were like, I'm not really sure. Never had anybody do that for me before. Like, all right, we think about it and you can decide when we come. So then we went and then we brought them to where we were. And then we were like, hey, is this something that we can do? And they were like, yeah, okay. My mom laughed and giggled the whole time. And that's the way my mom was. She laughed and giggled the whole time. But ultimately, I think it really had an impact on her too, because I've guided students in how to do this with their parents, and sometimes students do it with me as well, and it's usually very impactful to their mind. You can see it in their facial expressions and the way they process the experience, and even the parents that haven't studied with me at all, when their children do it for them, you can see it's impactful to them too, because part of what you do is you give them a little gift and you say, thank you for everything you've done for me. I appreciate all the benefits that, anything you've taught me, anything you've done for me. I apologize for any harm that I've caused you. You usually make like a little 3-minute, 5-minute little talk with them before you actually start washing their feet to help them to be able to see that you're very appreciative of having them in your life. So it's a really nice way of showing you care and you have appreciation for this person, but it also helps to humble the mind as well.
I could imagine that it would be awkward, maybe for me. And if I do it, and but also would think that maybe there would attachments arise also at the other person, maybe if I would make a small talk and wash their feet.
Yeah. Well, remember, everything that you're doing on the path to enlightenment is for your practice. If someone else's mind gets attached because of what you're doing, or they become conceited because you're washing their feet, that's on them. You're practicing in order to humble your mind. And that's what you would like to focus on. Okay. So just one last thing here to share with you guys is that it's important to always and forever to practice eliminating the ego and never assume that it's gone, because the ego is like this bad tenant that sticks around. It never pays you any rent. It never helps you and gives you any kind of benefit. And every time you think that it's out the door, it figures out a way to get back in, right? That's the way the ego is, right? So you show up to this tenant's house and you're like, hey, you haven't paid your rent. You're a week late. Oh, I'll get you that money. Just give me another 2 weeks. I'll get it for you. Oh, okay, no problem. And then you go away and you come back 2 weeks later. Oh, just give me 4 more days, 5 more days. That's all I need. Just give me 5 more days. Okay, you go away and you come back. Oh, oh, the check's in the mail. You haven't got it yet? Oh, it's already in the mail, right? This tenant's going to find out a way to stick around. Your ego does the same thing. And if you convince yourself that game's over, the ego's gone, you'll miss it when it arises. If you've ever played that game whack-a-mole where the moles are popping up and you have a mallet, and every time they pop up their head, you hit them with the mallet. Well, if you have the mallet down to your side thinking game's over, when they raise their head up, you're not going to be able to hit them. You have to stay diligent each moment, right? You need to be dedicated so you can pop them and pop them and pop them and pop them, right? So don't ever convince yourself that the ego's gone. Just always and forever be working to knock it down, because you can go periods of time for maybe 3 months or 6 months where you haven't seen any ego whatsoever, but then it can raise its ugly head on you. So you need to stay diligent and dedicated to make sure that you're aware whenever this ego arises, so that then you can knock it out and cut it off and let it go. Okay? So this is everything that I have to share with you guys. I'm just going to end the way I normally end classes, which is thank all of you guys for joining, all of you guys here and everyone online. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, I'm going to be sharing chapter 17, which is titled Eliminating Fears. Are you really scared? I'm going to teach you how to eliminate your fears, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any fear at all, including the fear of death. So I'm going to teach you how to go in and actually eliminate certain fears, no matter what they are, whether it's fear of heights or fear of death, fear of spiders, fear of snakes. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate all of these fears. And you can get to the point where you don't have those in the mind any longer. So that's what we're going to be doing next Sunday. And of course, on Wednesdays, we do meditation together. And if you're here in Chiang Mai, next week, I'm going to be teaching a harmony and relationships course from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. here at the temple. But also, I'm going to be live streaming it. So that's available for you through the live stream or the recordings on YouTube and Facebook and our podcast as well. So whatever you guys choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.